You're watching a Highwire Media podcast.
So we have to talk about New York State, a state that voted for Joe Biden in 2020 by 23 points, but only voted for Kamala Harris by just 12. It is moving to the right, and you have a very unpopular Democrat governor. There's a lot of unpopular Democrat leadership in the state of New York, and they had a relatively close election in 2022 where Kathy Hochul barely beat Lee Zeldin by New York standards for governor. Her approval rating has fallen even further since then. We now have this new poll from Siena, which shows that she is less popular in New York State than Donald Trump. She has a 44% approval rating, while Trump sits at 46%. Technically, if you do the net approval, it's roughly about the same, but here's the kicker. 31% of voters in New York say they would vote to re-elect Hochul, while 57% want somebody else. Now, this doesn't mean she's going to lose by 26 points, but it does show that she's extraordinarily unpopular. However, she's not unpopular to the point where she would lose a Democrat primary. She's unpopular to the point where she would scrape by in a Democrat primary as the incumbent governor, and then very possibly lose to a Republican in the general election. Could you see the state of New York electing a Republican governor? The answer is absolutely. You're seeing what's going on there. The leadership is extraordinarily weak, corrupt, and obviously left-leaning. Over time, people are going to want change. The border crisis has disproportionately affected New York, and New York's leadership has done nothing but coddle the people who have poured into the country illegally. Some of these people are staying in luxury hotels, while homeless veterans are on the street. It's a total disgrace. More and more people are waking up to this reality every day, which is why New York has moved vastly to the right. Take New York City, for example. Staten Island, which Donald Trump won by about 15 points in 2016 and 2020, is now projected to vote for him by 30 points this time around. He's also making up significant ground in places like Queens, Brooklyn, and the Bronx. Of course, we know New York City is still very blue, but it's getting less and less blue. Long Island is getting redder and redder. Donald Trump flipped Nassau County and won Suffolk County by 10 percentage points. He had barely won it in 2020. So all around, you see what's happening. Upstate New York is fed up with the leadership as well, and as a result, this is actually a prime pickup opportunity. There's reason to believe that Donald Trump's approval rating will remain high because we're a very polarized country. At this stage in the game, everybody has kind of made up their mind about Donald Trump. He's not going to have an approval rating in the mid-high 50s, but can he have one that's above water? Yeah. And if he can sustain that going into the midterms, they're not going to go as well for Democrats as they did in 2018. When Trump's approval rating was about 45% on a good day, it's not going to work out the same way for them this time around, especially because a lot of people who have never been engaged in politics before are now paying attention, and they support what Donald Trump is doing. Meanwhile, the Democrats are in total disarray. Every little thing Trump does that's popular, like trying to deport criminal illegal aliens, cutting wasteful spending, or exposing how taxpayer money is being sent to things like transgender opera plays in South America, causes the Democrats to have a meltdown. They act like it's a huge problem that Trump and Elon Musk want to audit the government and get the country out of debt. The truth is, a lot of government spending is money laundering, and they know it. You're seeing this corruption at both the national and state levels, and people want change. Now, does this mean 57% of New Yorkers will vote for a Republican? Not necessarily. But they do want somebody else, and according to this poll, Donald Trump is relatively popular in New York State. 46% approval, 51% disapproval. That's a better approval rating than he had in many swing states, or even in states he won during his first term. The entire vibe has shifted. When you look at Trump's policy proposals and how they poll among New York voters, a lot of them are extremely popular. For example, deporting illegal immigrants who have been convicted of a crime, 79% support, 11% oppose. Mandating two genders, a +7 net approval. Deporting illegal immigrants without a criminal record, 50-50 split in New York State. Among independents, 43% support it, while 59% of Democrats oppose it. But there's still a lot of undecided voters on this topic, and that's significant. These are policies that would have been considered unpopular in deep blue New York just a few weeks ago. Even on issues like tariffs, where Trump is in a little underwater, it's not by much, especially considering all the media hype against tariffs. In fact, we've seen that if you phrase tariff-related questions differently, they actually poll well nationwide. Now, some of Trump's ideas are less popular, like renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. That's not something people care about. But let's be real. If you wouldn't vote for a Republican governor in New York just because of that, you were never voting Republican in the first place. The bottom line is that many of Trump's policies are widely popular. If they pulled things like cutting wasteful spending, I'm sure that would perform well too. If Democrats want to die on the hills of open borders and a bloated bureaucracy, be my guest. You're going to turn New York red. And Donald Trump is going to get more and more popular. You're going to see that shift. Now, some of the early polls about Trump's popularity were more right-leaning, while the ones we're seeing now are more left-leaning. What we do know is that Trump is relatively popular, and people are unlikely to change their minds about him unless something drastically changes, like a significant economic improvement would actually help him overall. So, could New York elect a Republican governor in 2026? Yeah, Kathy Hochul is not popular, and when incumbents are really unpopular, they almost always lose. Tate Reeves, for example, was one of the most unpopular governors in the country back in 2023, and he almost lost to a Democrat in Mississippi. Governors as incumbents tend to be well liked. That's why they usually win re-elections. But Hochul isn't. She's less popular than she was during her first election, and she barely won in 2022, a year that wasn't great for Republicans overall. We'll see what happens on the primary front. She might get a primary challenge, but that doesn't mean her challenger will win. She'll probably win the primary, but when it comes to the general election, things could get interesting. On the Republican side, who knows what will happen? Mike Lawler is kind of a rhino, but New York is not a Republican state. Still voted Democrat by 12 points in 2024, so you're not going to have the most MAGA candidate running for governor. Would Zeldin run again? Probably not. He's heading the EPA in Trump's administration and already ran once before, so it could be Lawler. If that's the case, taking him out of Congress, where he's been a counter-signaler, might actually be an upgrade for Republicans in the governor's race. But no matter who the nominee is, the fact remains. 44% of Democrats want a different candidate. If they polled Hochul against a generic Republican, she'd probably be losing. And that is abysmal for a Democrat in New York. A Republican governor in New York would be a huge step in the right direction. The state-level leadership improves, state party will improve over time, and that can make New York competitive in future elections. There are demographics in New York that are shifting right. Hispanics, Italian Americans, working class whites in Long Island and Staten Island, and even Asian voters in Queens. There is still room for Republicans to grow. If they capitalize on this momentum, New York could be in a play in the future. But first, we'll see what happens in 2026. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Give us a thumbs up if you like our video. Hit that subscribe button down below. Hit the bell notification button to be notified of future videos. And of course, you can find us on all major podcast platforms, such as Good Pods, Amazon Music, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts from. And with that, thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll see you next time.